Before you invest in 2026, there is one thing that you need to get straight, and most videos just forget it altogether. This isn't about what to buy, it's about how to decide what to buy. How you need to think before you invest anything at all. Most people completely skip the step of investing when they ask themselves why I'm doing this, what risk I'm actually taking, and when will I need the money. If you get those wrong, everything else is just going to feel like a mistake. So a really good place to start is with cash, because people love to call it safe. It feels safe because the number never moves, you know. $10 today is $10 tomorrow. There's not really any volatility. There are headlines, but you don't really pay attention to them. And psychologically, that weighs on people's minds so much more than they realise. Our brains are wired to prefer stability, even though it can be misleading. In our minds, a flat line is a flat line, even though in reality it is moving behind. And the reason for that is because if I simply ask you why a $10 bill is worth $10, you wouldn't be able to give me a proper answer unless you're really clued up on economics. It works because we kind of all just agree that a $10 bill is worth $10. That's not a criticism at all, that's just how our money system has evolved and how it works. Now if we're to compare that to something tangible, and I was to ask you why is this house worth $500,000, you could be like, well, there's 4 bedrooms, there's a nice big garden, it's got good schools nearby. There's a reason as to why it has the value. It does something, it solves a problem, it has a purpose. Assets have a reason to hold the trust and the value, whereas cash is kind of just a thing that we all agree on. And trust isn't necessarily guaranteed. Sometimes trust can break suddenly. I mean, history is full of examples where the economy has completely crashed because they've either printed too much money and the price of the currency has just dropped. I'm looking at you, Germany, and cash savings have simply just evaporated out of nowhere. And don't get me wrong, those examples are very much extreme, but we don't necessarily need hyperinflation for our cash to be wiped out. Most of the time, it's a lot slower, it's a lot more subtle, and you won't ever notice it. And without being too boring, that's just simply because of inflation. It doesn't feel like we're losing anything because, like I said, the number is a flat line, it stays the same, but slowly over time, what we're using that money to buy is increasing in price instead. I mean, you'll have noticed your groceries cost more, your energy bills are going up, your car's costing more to run. Don't even get me started on the price of rent, we all know about that. So if your prices begin to rise while your money stays the same, there's a bigger gap between what you can actually afford, and that is simply known as your purchasing power shrinking. So that's why $100 10 years ago would have bought you a nice meal for your whole family, and today maybe you get, I don't know, your mains and a little bit of water with that. But I'm not going to bore you explaining any more about inflation, that will be for another video. But the core principle is, cash doesn't feel risky, but over the long term, it will quietly stop doing the job that you need it to. And that's being there when you rely on it. And again, this isn't what this video isn't about. It's not about growth for the sake of growth. It's not about chasing the biggest return that you can get. It's about making sure that the money that you earn today is still working for you in the future when you need it. And once you see that the whole idea of risk slowly begins to change, I mean, you've probably got a family member or an older friend that invested money, lost it, and is just like, keep away from investing, it's not worth it at all. In some regard, everything has an element of risk to it, even holding cash. The question that you need to ask yourself is, what kind of risk am I currently taking and am I willing to take? And that's going to change from person to person, whether that's going to be the risk of certain markets moving or the risk of cash just depreciating in value over time. And this is where people really misunderstand risk tolerance. Most people think it's, oh, how brave are you? If your whole investment portfolio drops 30%, can you deal with that? Can you stomach that and not drop out? That's not really what it is. Everyone's okay with the market risk when it's calm, things are going up, it's pretty stable, you know, not much going on. Risk tolerance only shows up when things are going wrong. When markets begin to drop and Bloomberg is saying that the world is ending and you're checking your account more often than you said you would do. Real risk tolerance is about why you're investing and when you're going to need the money. Because in reality, every investment is just a belief about where you think the markets are going. When someone says, just stick all of your money in the S&P 500 and just leave it, what they're basically saying is, just put it into the big US companies and hope that they continue to do well. And to them, that might be a perfectly reasonable belief, and to you, that might be what you believe is going to happen. But that's what you're betting on. The same goes if you decide to invest globally. You're spreading your risk, but you predict that everything is going to go up. Or that maybe you're looking at like a developing market like India, and you think India's going to do well, so you put some funds in there. Or that could be in an energy sector, or AI firms, you think they're going to do well. Every time you put money into an ETF that covers a certain market, you're betting that they're going to do well in the future. You just have that belief. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's quite important to understand that that's actually what you're doing. The mistake is pretending that those choices are neutral or that they're risk-free. And don't get me wrong, what's better than that than investing in a single stock is you're betting that I think this market is going to do well in the long term, rather than being like, I think this company here is going to do well in the long term. It's a lot safer bet, and you're kind of diversifying your risk a little bit, but you're still being risky thinking that that market is going to do well for you. Risk isn't just about price swings. It's about backing a future that doesn't play out the way that you expected. And this is where timing comes in, the bit that most people tend to ignore. Let's say that you've invested in something sensible, broad, diverse, long-term, all the stuff that people recommend. If you're investing that for 20, 30 years, the ups and downs don't really matter on a year-to-year basis. As long as you see that trajectory upwards, you're going to be alright with it. But let's say you need that money in 5 years because you're taking a pension out, or you need it for a deposit on a house. The timing suddenly matters a lot more. You're going to have to care about your individual plans because the markets aren't going to. You can be right in the long run, but still forced to sell in the wrong moment. And that's how people can say that investing isn't worth it in the long run, when it wasn't the investing that was a problem, it was their timing. Two people can invest in exactly the same thing and have two completely different outcomes just depending on when they needed the funds. So that's why looking at your risk profile and when you think you're going to need the money is about not finding the right investment, but when you're actually going to need the funds. Long-term money can afford uncertainty and the markets to be volatile. Short-term money cannot afford that. And that's why things like cash funds, lower risk assets, or simply not being invested to start with can make sense. Not because they're not exciting, but because they fit your timescale. Good investing isn't about copying someone else's portfolio. It's about aligning what you believe with, what you're saving for, and how much time you've got. So once you've got that straight, there's one more thing that people will rush past. Where you invest matters just as much as what you invest in. And the same investment can work very differently depending on the structure around it. In the UK, that might be a pension or an ISA. In the US, that might be a Roth IRA or a 401k. These aren't boring details. They're really important things to think about, depending on how much tax you pay on them, when you can access these savings, all of the things that tie into the idea about risk profiling. If you're thinking about something for the long term, maybe it goes into a pension account. If you need something shorter term, well, maybe, you look into a lifetime ISA in the UK and you invest in something that's going to be a steady, stable return. And again, it's something that people just don't think of at all. They put everything into one pot with no strategy, no matching up with their risk profiling, and hope that somehow it works towards the goals that they're trying to achieve. A different goal needs different structures. You can have different goals at the same time. You can be saving for a deposit and saving for your retirement, but you can't put the same strategy in place for both of them plans. They need to be tailored to what you think is going to happen and what you need to happen and when you need the money to be there. There's no point putting it all into the S&P 500 for it to drop 50% in 3 years' time when you're taking out a deposit. You should have just left it as cash, or put it into something like a cash ISA in the UK, something that will pay you a fixed amount each year. You don't have to worry about the value dropping. Once the structure is right, the actual investments become a lot easier. And that's really the whole point of this. Investing isn't about being clever, it's about being deliberate with your actions. Once you understand the trade-offs you're making, cash versus growth, risk versus time, flexibility, tax efficiency, all of them pay off, so you stop feeling overwhelmed and you don't need to rush. Starting right matters more than starting fast.